Are you looking to get ready, be prepared, and transform your financial future? Then you've come to the right place. This is the Get Ready Money podcast with Tony Stewart, where Tony has insightful conversations with financial experts who are changing the way we think about money. Catch up on the latest financial trends and hear practical advice from Tony and his expert guests so you can build healthy habits that work. Be empowered with tips for implementing small changes that can have a big impact on your financial future. So sit back and get ready to hear from today's guest.
Welcome to the Get Ready Money podcast, changing the way we think about money. I'm pleased to be joined today by Stevyn Guinnip. Stevyn is an author, speaker, and founder of Grow Wellthy. In this episode, we'll be discussing Stevyn's insights on how we change the way we think about money and growing wealthy. Stevyn, welcome to the Get Ready Money podcast. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Tony. Glad to be here.
Yeah, excited for this. I've wanted to have you on the show for so long. I think you're doing amazing work, and I'm hoping for everybody in the audience that you're going to find this to be a terrific episode. So to get started, tell us a little bit about yourself. What is your origin story?
Wow, my origin story starts when I was 11 years old, and my dad started to be in the financial services industry and began a practice working with people, helping them manage their money. And he used a phrase that I always remember that's like, we're preparing for a worst case scenario and everything else will be icing on the cake. And I remember that just like, being prepared for the future. And I grew up and I was very active and saw a lot of people who were maybe very well prepared with their money, but when it came to their health, their retirements what weren't what they wanted them to be. And so they were having one good year or not able to travel. And I saw that as a teenager that they really, had the money, but still didn't have the retirement they were looking for. So I said, hey, I'm going to fix this. I'm going to go become an exercise physiologist and then teach people how to be fit and healthy, and then they'll have their money and their health and everything will be happy. Well, not so much. Okay. It doesn't work. It's not that easy. But I did become an exercise physiologist for 20 years and thought I was pretty healthy. I had all the right diet and exercise things that I did. I actually went over to Australia and launched a kettlebell program over there. It was a year commitment that I did. While I was there, I became septic and almost died. And yeah, it was pretty, that's like the wake up moment, right? Everybody kind of has those at times where you're just like, okay, what's going on here? How did I get so sick? And when I really started diving into it, I realized that wellness, health, that is so much more than exercise, right? So my 20 years in the exercise physiologist, only focusing on exercise didn't really get me the outcome that I was shooting for, which was longevity and health and happiness and all of that stuff. So I had to go back to the research. And long story short, Tony, I found out that the parallels between good finances, financial wellness, and physical wellness are very similar. And that was my aha moment that I was going to go teach people that you can treat your health like an asset, and then it's there in retirement when you need it, which is really exciting for a lot of people.
Yeah, well, that's awesome. And I think, there's starting to be more focus on that is that, our physical wellness and financial wellness are very much tied into each other. So that's
Yes.
awesome. And so let's go deeper. Of course, let's first start with your book. What inspired you to write your book, Grow Wellthy?
Yeah, so my book is it's something I never wanted to do. Okay, so I'll just say that first of all. I didn't set out wanting to write a book. And one of my clients who is in the financial services industry said to me, Stevyn, nobody has ever showed me health from this perspective, from a financial perspective, from a compounding interest, pay off your debt perspective, your health debt, your sleep debt, right? Those things that are going to hinder your future, and how to start putting deposits into my health account so it's there when I need it. Those were all concepts and connections he hadn't made before. And he's like, no one's talking about this. Everyone's talking about eat less, move more, all this task-oriented stuff, but not putting it into a framework that makes sense to people. And he's like, you need to write a book about this. I think this was back in 2021. It was a few years ago. And I was like, you're crazy. I don't have time for that. I'm not writing a book. And here we are. The book is just about to come out. It might be out when this actually goes live, but and I've changed the title. It's called The Health Wealth Playbook, and it's a four-step strategy to live well longer. And so that's really what it's doing, is just connecting the dots and saying all the things you do with your money, you should be doing those things with your health too. And then both of those things are laying the rails for your destination, your journey that's not going to derail you along the way. So many people, Tony, build their financial rail on this train track, right? But they forget that their health is a silent partner in that process. And that's why you get all this money and then people can't actually enjoy it, because they don't have that health. It's been bankrupt, right? And so that's what I teach people to do, is say, let's just keep putting little deposits into this health account so that it's there when you need it.
Well, that's awesome. And so, let's go a little deeper on just the general concept because you talk a lot about um, you know, lifespan and health span. Tell us a little bit about more about that.
Sure. So I feel like people in general think, how long am I going to live? Right? Like that's lifespan, first breath to last breath. And you need to have enough money to cover that and to live well without a lot of stress. What I don't think people do well is ask the better question, is how long are you going to live well? And so that is inside of lifespan, and that is called health span. Health span is when you don't need significant medical intervention, when you can pretty much move and do the things you want and feel pretty good, right? That's health span. What we're finding is that our lifespans over the last 100 years have actually increased significantly from, let's say, the mid 50s 100 years ago, now to the late 70s or beyond, right? That's lifespan. But what we're also finding is that health span is not increasing. So health span is still staying around, the 50s to 60s. So we're spending a lot more time in what I call sick span. It's the gap between health and death. And that sick span, can be 10 years, 15, 20 years. Some people I've even talked to are 30 years, really with significant health problems where they're not free to do what they want with the people they want for as long as they want. And it's really hindering them. And so that's really what I'm trying to do with this book, is teach people, how do you lengthen your health span and shrink that sick span so that you have a more enjoyable quality of life, and so that your sicknesses aren't draining all your finances at the end of your life.
Well, that's awesome. And I think everybody, either, if you're already in that age bracket, but we all know with our parents that we've seen that, or our other loved ones or friends, that's true. At the end of our life, there's just a lot of people who are very limited in what they can do. We put off that trip of the lifetime until retirement, and then we're not able to make the trip of the lifetime. So, I think that's an important thing for people to consider, is how you're able to enjoy your retirement. Personally, I'm trying to reframe retirement as financial independence, because I think that's what it's really about. Is
Mm.
it's also how we spend our working years, and I know you talk about that as well. So, let's go a little deeper. One of the things you talk about is a health debt. What is a health debt?
Yeah, so let's just say when you're born, let's just imagine that most people have pretty good health, right? And as they age, their health begins to diminish over time, and it creates a downward slant until death at the end. And what it is that's causing it to go down is is you're collecting debt. Okay. Aging obviously is kind of like inflation, where it's going to happen, we hope, right? It's good to grow old. We want to keep growing older. But we also don't want to collect too much debt along the way so that we can keep that from crashing and burning too quickly. And so some of the forms of health debt come in things like blood work, right? Like let's say you go to get your annual blood work and you've got some numbers that are out of range. That would be considered a health debt that needs to be paid off. And some people go on medication when really sometimes 80% at least of those chronic conditions we can affect with our lifestyle. And so it's really smart, instead of just taking a medication, maybe to try to pay the health debt off. Maybe you'll still need a medication in a few years, but you can kick the can down the road further, which is exciting. But also, health debt can come in the form of, body composition. Maybe you've lost muscle, or maybe you've put on some weight around your stomach, which is called visceral fat. And visceral fat makes it hard for your organs to work very well. So that would be a type of health debt. Um, Maybe it's like pain, right? Or low energy or poor sleep, and you're just exhausted all the time. That's a form of health debt. And so being able to assess that for yourself and say, how much debt am I carrying? And what kind of assets do I have for my health? And then just do a kind of a quick assessment, right? And I tell people it's super simple. All you have to do is draw a line across the top and put assets and liabilities on the left and right. And then you draw a line down the middle and you just list all the things that aren't going so well and all the things that are going well. Maybe like, oh, I like to bike, or my knees I don't have any pain in my knees, or I sleep really well. Like those would all be assets. Your liabilities are going to be like, my blood work came back, questionable or whatever. I'm on medications. And the goal here is to have more assets than liabilities. And then you're not in health debt, right? So that's what I teach people to do, is just look at their health as if it were one of their assets that they're trying to protect and grow.
Well, that's awesome. And there you go. That's the tie-in to money. It's almost like a budget is,
Yeah.
reducing your expenses
Hmm.
and increasing your income and being mindful of your spending, which is your
Right.
health debts. Is, we're all going to end up with some health debts. Like I played basketball, so, my knees are not in great shape, but that's true of pretty much every person I know that's over
Yes.
6 feet that played basketball or, any kind of sport. It's like some of your health debts you can't do much about, but you can sort of work around that in
Yeah, you
other
can
ways.
support
Like I
them.
said,
Yeah.
exactly. Like you can do other exercises to build up around the knee. Now, I'm just using that as an example about myself, but that's, so I
Yeah.
think for everybody watching and listening, is what you're talking about is like, backing up those things, like you said, is sort of maybe even insurance is like, how do you turn that debt into an asset, which is actually the next question is, what are a couple tips for people to turn a health debt into an asset?
Yeah. Well, you're exactly right, Tony. We've all got debts or liabilities, right? That we can either wipe them off the balance sheet, or we can just keep them from getting worse as fast, right? So we can help manage them. And so when we think about things like genetics, right? That's a health debt that you can't do anything about it. You just have to figure out how to live with it. So, if you've got a pre-existing condition or whatever, a injury from I did gymnastics, right? So I've got some
Oh
things
boy.
that, yeah, that's why my daughter doesn't do gymnastics, because it really can create some problems when you're 50, like I am. And so you're like, okay, well, when I'm talking to clients, I say, how many debts do we have here? And you could call them even like taxes. Okay. What's going on in your life that's pulling away the health you already have? So whatever you've got, let's keep it. And so some things that might pull it away is like late nights, right? They're staying up too late, scrolling, watching TV, whatever, eating really late at night. Maybe they're drinking a lot of alcohol, or any alcohol for some people is problematic. Maybe they're binging on sugar. There's lots of different things. And so what we try to do is identify them first. It's called awareness. And then we get curious and we say, which one of these would be most interesting to me to try to work on, right? And it might be just kind of reining it in a little bit, or it might be removing it completely. There's no right or wrong answer, but if you can start with awareness first and just honestly look at where your health situation is, no embarrassment, no guilt, no shame, just an honest assessment. All right, here's where we are. This is our baseline. Where are we going to go? And then you ask the questions and get curious. I call it a healthy dose of vitamins A and C, awareness and curiosity. And when you get curious, things happen because the human nature is curious and we like to find answers. So sometimes, if you can just pose the question, what would it be like if I stopped eating an hour before bed, or if I went to bed a little bit earlier? Or if I had, instead of 3 drinks of alcohol, I had 2 drinks of alcohol, right? Like just start to get curious. And then what's really cool is that when the body starts operating better because you made a few positive changes, it feels good to keep going, right? So I was talking to someone just today, and she said, I know on the nights that I drink alcohol, it's going to cost me my sleep. I have a terrible night's sleep on that night. Not everybody does, but for her, she does. And I was like, oh my gosh, cost me my sleep. So what's the true cost of something? And so I like to tell people a little trick. Let's say if you wanted to pay off some of your health debt, whatever it is, you identify it, you see the habits that are contributing to it, and then you're faced with this critical moment. Okay, you're like, okay, do I want the drink or not want the drink? We'll just continue with this analogy, okay, the alcohol. You have to say, will I be better tomorrow with it, or will I be worse tomorrow with it? Okay, that's first question. And then once you answer that, then you ask a second question that says, is it worth it? Is it worth it? Because sometimes it is, whatever the thing is, whatever the vice or the thing is you want to do, because we're here to enjoy ourselves and not just be a bunch of rules and things that we can and cannot do, right? So sometimes it's just like people do things but don't really think of it like intentionally. So if you can just be intentional and be like, is this a good or a bad move? Is it move me closer or further away from my goals? And then is it worth it to do that? And I think that's a good place to start.
I love that. And, that's my whole goal with this whole change the way you think about money is to start with curiosity, is to be curious and ask questions about your money. And it's the same thing. And I was thinking as you were talking about the alcohol, and, just to isolate that, is, all these personal finance gurus talk about giving up your daily coffee. And, and that's a $5 savings. But I was thinking about that, boy, if you cut back one drink, which is like $20 in a lot of bars,
Hmm.
for a drink. I mean, boy, that's saving you $20 rather than $5, and you can still have your Starbucks if that's what you want. But again, that may still provide you a health debt. So I'm not saying necessarily replace, a Frappuccino for a Manhattan, but
Yeah,
you
yeah, that's
know,
a good point.
you can think about how these things, I mean, that really ties a line from one to the other is, it's almost creating a budget.
Hmm.
Um, is, balancing out, reviewing, your numbers. And that's
Hmm.
all this really is.
Hmm.
But, as you point out, is a lot of these positive things that you're doing for your health are also going to have a positive impact for your financial bottom line. You'll spend less money on doctor's visits when you get older because healthcare costs in retirement are huge, a huge percentage of somebody, retirees. And then you're spending
Yeah,
all that time in doctor's offices. I mean, how many people do you know that are in their 80s who spend a lot of time going to different doctors? Um,
yeah.
so these things do tie directly into each other. And as you point out, have the same principles.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, there's some research that came out of Age Wave in 2014 and then again in 2021. Age Wave is a leader in understanding the aging population. So it was Merrill Lynch in 2014, and then it was Edward Jones in 2021, where they asked retirees and they said, okay, what is it that's most important to you as you're retired? And 96% said that the number one most important part of retirement to make it a happy, successful retirement was good health. Wouldn't you think money? Right? No, good health. There were 4 things: good health, relationships, purpose, and finances. And they were in that particular order. And so then they asked them, what's the number one cause of an early, unplanned retirement? So you think you're going to have a few more years of earning capacity, but suddenly you don't. Why? And it was a health event. Okay, so that'll blow up a financial plan really fast if you have to retire 5 or 10 years early because of some health event. And then the final one was, what's your number one worry in retirement? And it was healthcare expenses. So, in these earlier years before you actually get there, if you can start making these deposits into your health, you're going to save dollars and worry decades into the future.
That's awesome. Do you know the name of that study?
I think it's called the new age of the new retirement. Gosh, I can't remember the exact title, but it's if you Google Edward Jones and age wave, then I think it was a 2021 study.
Okay.
I'm sure you'll find it.
Okay, cool. And for everybody watching and listening, I will try to locate the study and share it in the show notes so you can access it for yourself. So, Stephen, before we get into the get ready questions, you've created something called the Wealth Club. Can you share with us a little bit about what the Wealth Club is and how it helps people?
Yeah, so the Wealth Club is play on words with Health Club, right? But this is your Wealth Club, and it's where we have people who get together and they're on a journey to better health. And we apply it through something called your wealth plan. And it's a one-page document that gives you 16 opportunities to improve your health in a day. And what we found, we customize it to each person so they know exactly what they should be doing for their goals, what they like that makes them feel happy, all of that good stuff. And then the Wealth Club is where we actually work out that plan together. And that's where we do a monthly challenge, and it's either one of the four categories of health that we talk about because I teach from something called the hierarchy of wealth and WELLTH, right, of wellness. And it's a hierarchy that starts at the bottom and works its way to the top, and it starts with your mindset. How do you think about your health? How do you assess it? How aware of it are you? And then the next level up is your mend or your recovery. That's your sleep and your stress. How are you recovering from your day? And then the next level up, level three, is about how your meals, how do you eat and fuel your body? What are they made of? Are they the right things? And then level four is move. And that's how you do appropriate, effective exercise to keep yourself resilient for the future. And so that's what we do is we work out our plans with each other and we do challenges in each of these four categories on a monthly basis. We do education, we support each other, and it's just a really great community of people who are trying to grow their health asset.
That is awesome. So, everybody watching and listening, of course, there will be links to the Wealth Club so you can check it out for yourself, as well as to Stephen's books, as always. So, Stephen, let's get into the Get Ready Money questions. These are questions that I ask all of my guests. They're more rapid fire questions. The first one is, what basic money concept do you wish people knew?
Oh, basic money concept is that little actions count. Doesn't have to
Love
be
it.
aggressive.
I love it. Doesn't have to be aggressive. I'm just taking notes here for the show notes. Um, the next one is, what is one simple thing people can do each year to set themselves up for financial success?
I think it's just kind of what I said before, awareness, knowing where you are, don't ignore it, right? Whether it's your health asset, your financial asset, they're all still sticky and super connected with each other. You can't separate one from the other. And so it's about knowing where you are, but more importantly, where are you headed? What is your trend?
I love that. Where are you headed? What's your trend? And like you said, this is all tied in together. So when you're doing your reviews of different things, it's like, set your goals because they are going to be interrelated. So the next
Exactly.
one is, I know this is up your alley, is what is one habit that people can change when it comes to their money?
A habit that they can change for their money is that if they can think of it as allocations into specific buckets. And when I say this, I'm speaking to about money, but it's also true for health, right? It's still an asset that affects your money. So when we think about like having money in available, right? In cash, that's a bucket. When you have it in savings, when you have it in investments, when you've got it in insurance or whatever, those are different buckets to make sure you're covered. The same is true for your health. Make sure you're spending some time on your mindset, on your recovery, on your meals, and on your movement. And that's your allocations. Like you said earlier, kind of like having a budget and putting things in the right spot.
Definitely. I can identify, and I know this is a big part of your work with financial advisors, is I joined a startup and the hours were just,
Mhm.
you know, a lot. It was impacting, my relationship with my family. It was impacting, I was tired, because I
Mhm.
was working really long hours, sometimes, Saturdays, even Sunday mornings sometimes.
Mhm.
And, those things definitely had an impact on how I felt. They cut into, exercise time and everything else. And, so it's
Yeah.
like it does all tie in.
It
Uh,
does. And if you've got a lot of stress in your life, it makes your body not able to repair itself. So, because it's putting all its energy to be ready to run or fight or, whatever. And so your cells don't get repaired. And then your insulin is high and your cortisol is high, and which means that you become weight loss resistant or you put on more weight, right? So if someone's trying to lose weight but they're very stressed, they're not going to have very easy time doing it because their body is resistant to that, thinking that it's under attack, right? We need to save this fat for another time when we're going to be in trouble. And so you just look at, and then if you don't sleep well, it makes you not recover as well. It makes you choose the poor foods to eat, right? And so it's like this like self-perpetuating cycle. And so stress is one of the main places I work with my clients is if we can get that kind of toned down, then everything else starts to kind of fall in place a little bit better. And if you don't, everything else kind of falls out of place, right?
Definitely. So, so that's one thing to think about if you're a financial planner or financial coach, is like, how are you running your practices? Because you actually may be doing your clients a disservice if you're not rested and
Mm-hmm.
taking care of yourself. Because if you're not doing that, then you're not going to be at your best and you're not going to be able to provide the best service
Right.
to your clients, or if you're running a startup, because I have a lot of fintech startup people who listen to this, I mean, it's hard when you're doing a startup. So actually, just real quick, do you have any tips for startup founders who are sort of in that space where they're, stretched
Yeah.
thin?
Yeah, yeah, it's really important I call it flipping the switch on stress because your body is either, think of a light switch, like it's either on and you're in fight or flight, you're working mode, right? So startup people are like on and they're working and doing. But if they're not careful, they'll stay there chronically. So they have to learn how to flip the switch off and then start again, and then turn it off and then start again, and do that multiple times throughout the day. So what do I mean? The switch is called your vagus nerve. Have you heard of it, Tony?
I have, but I don't remember what it
Okay, well,
is.
I'll explain it for anybody that's listening too. Your vagus nerve it connects to your brain, goes through your neck, down through the center of your body, connects to your heart, and it connects to all of your other major organs and ends down at the tailbone. Okay, so think of a straight line like a major nerve highway going all the way through your body. And when you're in fight or flight, you're in a nervous system state where that nerve is offline, essentially. It's not doing what it should do. So your heartbeat speeds up, your breathing goes up into your chest, and you forget to eat or, whatever. Like all kinds of things crazy happen. Your sleep schedule gets off because all these organs are not getting the messaging that they need to get. So a couple of ways to tone that vagus nerve takes just like 1 minute. You can do it periodically throughout the day, but maybe start in the morning, then do it right after lunch, and then do it before you go to bed as a starting place. And then when you begin to notice it, you can do it as often as you need to. So something would be just to put your hand on your belly, put your hand on your chest, and move your breath to your belly. That tones your
Hmm.
vagus nerve. Okay, because it starts to use your diaphragm muscles, which are around your ribs, and it creates a vibration and muscular tension that tones that vagus nerve. So, belly breathing, not chest breathing. Another thing you can do, and just do like four or eight breaths like that. Another thing you can do is to hum or sing, and it sends vibrations right here through the neck and tones that vagus nerve, right? So you can sometimes even listen to music if it's the right tone of music and it creates that vibration in your ears. You can change your body position. So you can put your heels higher than your heart, and that's going to create a vagus nerve turn
Hmm.
a transition, right? So you can lay on the floor and put your legs up the wall, or you can just put your feet up on your desk and kind of kick back for a moment and give your body just a moment of break to reset, and then you can start again. But it's the number of times that the amount of time you spend in that, it's called the parasympathetic nervous system, rest and digest, adds up and gives you a much better sleep and makes you much more effective the next day. So I would just encourage any startup people or anyone who's dealing with a lot of stress, and that even is like working moms. I see that all the time with a lot of burnout,
Oh
right?
boy. Yeah.
Yeah, is just find a moment to do four deep belly breaths or sing a song, hum whatever in the car or change your body position is going to help a lot.
Definitely. And for people who sing like me, my recommendation is to go find somewhere to sing where nobody else can hear you. So,
In the shower maybe or in the
yeah,
car.
exactly. So that is wonderful advice. And for everybody watching or listening, I'm going to try to do a little research here, Stephen. If you have any articles on this, you can share. I'll try to share something in the show notes so you can go a little bit deeper on this.
Yeah.
Um, just a couple more questions. What is your go-to your favorite money resource for yourself, whether it's a podcast, website, book, newsletter, app? What do you turn to get your financial information?
Oh, wow. Let's see. My favorite resource. It's probably reading books. Okay, I've got this new book. I don't know if it's any good or not, but it says, I'm going to teach you how to get rich. And I
Okay.
can't think of his name. It's famous. Like that he's got
Oh
I
yeah,
think a
Ramit
Netflix
Sethi.
show.
Yeah.
Sorry?
Ramit, how I may not be pronouncing correctly. Ramit Sethi. I will
Yeah,
teach you to be rich. I
I will
think,
teach you to be rich. I just got that book. Haven't even cracked it yet. But um, you know, uh, my kids are 14 and 18, so we read books like The Millionaire Next Door and Rich Dad Poor Dad and things like so it's just like bringing in new concepts and ideas through books is my favorite way to read.
I love it. I love books as well. And you can't go wrong with reading a book. You know,
Right. Right.
and that increases your health. Reading a book helps you change your thinking and reset. So I
It
think it also
does.
helps with your mental health. So
Yeah. 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 I agree. I agree. And there's some other tactics, with this vagus nerve thing I was talking about, like if you can move your eyes, so your eyes reading back and forth without the blue lights shining in them from a screen. So if you can tone down the blue light but keep your eyes kind of moving and engaged, it's a different kind of brain stimulation. So reading a book before bed is a really good idea.
that's awesome. Well, thanks
Yeah.
for sharing those. And for everybody, as always, I'll put those books in the show notes so you can check them out. So, Stephen, to wrap up, what is your number one tip on changing the way we think about money?
Hmm. Number one tip is that your money is not it's not a silo. That's the word I was looking for. It's not a silo. How your relationships, your health, your purpose, all of these things feed into your relationship with your money. So if you're just looking at returns and to make the right decision and put it in the right place, you're missing a lot of the equation, which is to do with the psychology, behavior, and health that drives all of your behavior. So that's just know that it's intricately uh, it's integral. I can't think of the word that I'm thinking of. Hold on a second. That your money is integrated in every aspect of your life.
I love it. Integrated into every aspect of your life. And I think we've talked about that. is you can't escape it. I mean, they talk about that with worker health, people taking time off because they're run down, that it impacts everything. But like we've talked about, it impacts your performance. But the longer term impact is what we don't think about. It's just like starting to save early. And you mentioned compound interest briefly, but it's sort of like compound interest. If you're not taking care of these things in your 20s and 30s, it's going to show up later. It may not
Yeah.
show up then, but taking care of your health, and the best day to make the change is just today. Don't
Hmm.
worry about what you've done in the past because it doesn't matter. The past is
Right.
past.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly. Just like with money, you don't want to try to catch up when you turn 60, right? That's not a very good plan financially. The same is true for your health. It's not too late to do anything. You certainly can always do something, but it makes much more sense. It's much more wise to start as early as possible.
yeah, it's part of an aging plan. I've started to talk
Mhm.
about that, and maybe that's something we should all focus on is instead of a financial plan is, create a life plan. And
Mhm.
for people watching and listening, I've done a couple episodes with George Kinder, the founder of Life Planning, so you can go much deeper on the concept of life planning and how all this ties together, because that's what we're really talking about and why I'm glad you were able to join us today. So, Stephen, where
You.
can people learn more about you? Where will they be able to pick up a copy of the Health Wealth Playbook and find out about your club?
Yes, awesome. So if they go to growwellthy.com and it's GROWWELLTHY.com, and they can actually do a quick quiz to assess their own health if they want to see how they're doing in these key metrics that I've put out there. And they can just find it on my website or go to /quiz, and that will take them straight to this. Takes like a minute to take this quiz and see where you are. So that's the first place. The second place is to go to growwellthy.com and then go into the resources, and that's where you'll find the book wait list or the book purchase list.
Cool, cool. And
Yeah.
when Stephen's book is live, I'll include links to find Stephen's book. Um, so, thank you very much for joining us on the Get Ready Money podcast today. It's been a pleasure.
Yes, thank you so much, Tony. I've enjoyed it.
Yeah, and thank you everyone as always for tuning into this episode of the Get Ready Money podcast. If you learned something today to change the way you think about money or your health, please be sure to subscribe and to tell a friend. Until next time, let's change the way we think about money.